my name is Emily Thayer. I'm from Wood River High School and this is my opposition constructive. Before I begin, I would like to thank my opponent and judge for participating in this round. For a brief off-time roadmap, I will start by reading my case, then I will move on to attack my opponent's case. Now I will begin my time. I rise to oppose the proposition. This House believes that prisons should be abolished. Many arguments will be made saying that prisons are bad and that the prison system is flawed. And many of these arguments are very good arguments. But even if the prison system is flawed, that doesn't mean that we should abolish all of them. Prisons can be reformed and saved from any of the arguments that the proposition will make. Reducing the number of prisons that we have would be very beneficial, but we most certainly do not need to abolish all of them. Now I would like to provide a definition. Abolish, formally put an end to a system, practice, or institution. The proposition has to prove that all prisons must be abolished due to the definition of the word abolish. I reserve the right to define any other terms as necessary throughout the round. Contention 1. Reformation. Time magazine takes its viewers through one of the world's most humane prisons, which is in Norway. Instead of abolishing prisons, the effort could be put to reducing the amount of prisons that we have and making them nicer places. The maximum sentence in Norway, even for murder, is 21 years. Since most inmates will eventually return to society, prisons mimic the outside world as much as possible to prepare them for freedom. The setup of the prison is somewhat like a hotel or dorms. They are nice and well kept. This is the type of reform that other countries should use instead of their prison systems. Contention 2. Prisons are important. Included in the definition of prison are military prisons. Dangerous people, all the way from terrorists to serial killers, need places to be held. Prisons should be used as a last resort for cases where people have been put on trial and there are no other options. Prison abolition and alternatives. Prison Justice 2008. Imprisonment should be a last resort. The presumption should be against its use. Before any offender is incarcerated, the prosecution should bear the burden of proving in an evidentiary hearing that no other alternatives exist. An equal burden should be required for the denial of revocation of good time, probation, and parole, which are the only other ways of imposing imprisonment. So, in conclusion, prisons are very important to today's society. They provide confinement for dangerous criminals and protect the innocence of the world. The number of prisons we have should be reduced and the system should be reformed, but we should not abolish prisons completely. Now I will go on to attack my opponent's case. First off, my opponent provided no citations, so there is no way for the judge and I to know if the information she presented is accurate or credible. Because of the lack of citations in her speech, if I can disprove her points, the judge and my opponent must consider them invalid for debate during the rest of the round. Within my opponent's first point, she included information on how prison guards are at fault for 80% of sexual abuses in prisons. According to the Business Insider, the reason for this corruption of prison guards is that the officers are not content with their salaries. This brings up the issue that prisons have become major corporations whose main focus is money, not the well-being of the public and the prisoners. These guards care too much about their salaries and not enough about doing their job. This only supports my case further because it proves that prisons need to be reformed, not abolished. My opponent also talked about human rights violations committed by prisons. I agree that human rights violations are a very bad and serious thing. This also supports my case because we need to alter the prison system so that they stop violating human rights. They need to be fixed, not abolished. She brings up the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25. Within this article, it says that everyone has the right to an adequate standard of living and security, in circumstances beyond their control. Committing a crime is a decision made by an individual. In the case of a prisoner, the circumstance is within their control. So this is not relevant to prisoners. Therefore, this argument made by my opponent is no longer valid in this round. My opponent also said that if we abolish prisons, we will have less crime. However, according to an article in the Atlantic magazine, prisons have made it possible for crime to be about half of what it was at its peak in 1991. Violent crime plummeted 51%, property crime fell 43%, homicides are down 54%. In 1985, there were 1,384 murders in New York City. Last year, there were only 333. Since prisons reduce crime, abolishing them would make societies much more dangerous. My opponent used Finland as an example for how we should solve the problem with our current prison systems. However, Finland did not abolish their prison system. They changed it so that it would work better. Since my opponent is using Finland as an example, she agrees with me that we should reform prisons. This goes against her case, which means that the argument made by her regarding Finland no longer stands. This supports my case further. Because of what I have proven to be true in this speech, we must not abolish prisons. We must simply reform them. Thank you.